So there's no share. Oh, you're heading out today anyway.
You gotta tell me how to hook the dog on the way.
Well, it's the same.
I've never done it, so.
If you go to the WhatsApp, are you part of the WhatsApp
Yeah.
group?
Yeah.
So it's the same link, the Choshen Mishpat link. Someone just posted it yesterday.
You don't even have to do that. If you scroll to the top, go to the WhatsApp group, go to the
Yeah.
very top of your iPhone, once your app is open, and right on the top, if you click on that, it'll open up. Top, and it's right there. Figured that out because Zach told me that.
What's
Sure. So here it is here. And this. And Yerushalmi Berachos. Very top. Stage that. And there it is. Just top.
okay?
Get it?
Morning. Good morning.
Go see, here's your app.
It's no longer the WhatsApp group is no longer called Choshen.
Oh, we changed it.
It's called Yerushalmi.
Very top. On the children. Very top of the phone. So click on there, it is there. So it's right like that's it. Just it goes automatically.
Yeah, Woodstock, Ontario.
That's it, you see.
Yeah, are you familiar with Woodstock?
I was born and raised there.
You were born and raised in Woodstock, Ontario?
Very capital of Canada.
Just continue to this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, these are Mennonites where they.
They're not. They're just regular Christian dudes. Nice blue collar workers.
I went over, I spoke to a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, they were wonderful.
This was last night. No, I should have came.
Yeah. Yeah, they were wonderful guys.
Because I went a couple years ago for.
I have Zoom.
For personal reason to Woodstock. And see my dad's store that was there and all the stuff brings up every second. I went across the street where they had a coffee shop, which I never had before. Went in there, I always where we came out. This is during the orange shoes with the Hamas or whatever. And they greeted me so strongly. Everybody came up to me.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, these guys were the salt of the earth and very pro Israel. Yeah. We had a really nice Q&A afterwards.
I told them I've been to Woodstock many times. I used to have a good customer there.
Who's that?
Woodstock Cars to Car Audio.
Sorry?
His name was the name of the store was Woodstock Car Audio. I'm going back 25 years and I used to go there all the time.
Oh, from Woodstock. My dad had a store.
Can you believe it? Wow.
In Dundas.
Amazing. Okay.
Everything this year, like specialty people.
All right, Sevra. And anyway, in the Art Scroll edition, we're on Gimel Amud Aleph, on the second line. And what we were talking about is that in order to determine that it's Tseisa Kochavim, you need to have 3 medium stars that are out. That is what determines Tseisa Kochavim. And remember, we said if there's only 1 star out, then it's certainly day. If there's 3 stars out, it's certainly night. And if there's 2 stars out, it's Safek Yom, Safek Laila. We're not sure whether it's day or night. It's during that Bein Hashmashos period. So today, hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about what this Bein Hashmashos period means.
Are you recording?
I believe I am recording. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it says it's recording.
Very good. Sorry.
Thanks, Izzy.
So what is the translation of that word?
Hashemashot. It's a great question. Literally, it means between the suns, but it also probably means, I have to go back.
Exactly accurate.
I have to go back and think. What does it mean then? Doesn't mean between the suns because we only have one sun, but maybe it means between sunrise and or sunset and nightfall, between the 2 positions of the suns. Maybe that's what it means. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yossi b'Rebbi Bon uvilchod di yitchamun talasa kolchavin bar minhada kolchavta. So Rabbi Yossi bar Bon says that you have to make sure that 3 medium stars are visible, in addition to a certain star that he calls Kochavta. Now, what is this star called Kochavta? It's normally seen all the time during the day, and it's an addition to the 1 star that is also just comes out after sunset, that we said is part of the three stars, but there's an additional star that is sort of like a constant it's visible even during the daytime. He probably is referring to either Saturn or Venus, one of the planets that is not really a star.
Except they're not always visible. And let's take different positions in the sky.
That is true.
Oh, so maybe it's the North Star that is.
I don't think it's the North Star, but I could be wrong.
Well,
Okay.
that's over Yerushalmi is different, but I thought
Twilight and dusk is the translation GBT.
Yeah, no, we know that, but Hal wanted to know the literal translation of what that word hashmashot means.
Between the sun.
Between the suns?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Rabbi Yaakov de Romana, b'shem Rabbi Yehuda ben Pazi. So who's Rabbi Yaakov? So there's two interpretations of what de Romana means. Darom means the south. So some say that he was the southerner, and others say it means de Romana, that he was of Rome, because there was a Jewish community with sages in Rome at the time. Okay, he says Kochav Echad Vada Yom Shnaim Laila. So he disagrees. This Rabbi Yaakov disagrees with the previous opinion. The previous opinion was that when there's one star, it's day. When there's three stars, it's night. When there's two stars, it's that suffix period of Bein Hashmashos. He disagrees. He says when there's one star, it's certainly day. And when there's two stars visible, then you know for sure it's night. So the Gemara says, Veles le safek, but doesn't he hold that there's this period of doubt between the day and the night called Bein Hashmashos? The Gemara's assumption is that everyone agrees that there's that period of Bein Hashmashos. So according to him, when is it? So Islay Safek Bein Kochav LeKochav. So he says, yes, there is a Safek period. As soon as the first star is visible and the second star has not yet materialized, that's the period of Bein Hashmashos. So it's we don't know how long that period is for him. We haven't discussed the period of Bein Hashmashos, but apparently the period between 1 and 3 stars is longer than the period between 1 and 2 stars. But he still holds that there's that period of Bein Hashmashos. So Tani, Kol Zaman She Pnei Mizrach Ma'adimos Zehu Yom. Now we have a brisa, and I believe this brisa is brought in the Bavli as well. And it basically says that as long as the eastern sky, and we're talking about sunset, where does the sun set? Sets in the west. So what the Gemara is going to do now is give us a criterion of how you know when Bein Hashmashos is based on the appearance of the eastern sky. So apparently, it could still be considered to be nighttime, even when there's still some glimmers of light in the western horizon. But now let's look at the eastern horizon. Kol zman shepnei mizrach ma'adimos zehu yom. If the eastern sky still has red in it, then you know the eastern horizon, then you know that it's still daytime. Okay? Hichsifu zehu bein hashmashos. If they start to go dim, in other words, they have started to go dark, but it hasn't completely gone dark, that's called Bein Hashmashos. Ishchiru nase ha'elyon shava l'tachton zehu laila. But if the whole eastern horizon goes dark, so that the top part of the horizon and the lower part of the horizon look the same, in other words, we've always had that experience when you're driving, you turn right, it's still light, you turn left, it's all dark already. So that's considered to be nighttime. So even if there's still some light in the western sky, it's still considered to be nighttime. Rebbe Omer, Halavana bitekufasa, he says, Rebbe says that when he's talking about a different way of determining when is day, when is Bein Hashmashos, and when is night. When you look at the moon, bitekufasa, when the moon is full, okay, the 15th of the month, Hischil galgal chama l'shakeya utechilas galgal levana la'alos Zehu bein hashmashos. So when the sun begins to set and the moon begins to rise, that's bein hashmashos. That seems very strange because what does that mean? Hischil galgal lishkoa. The sun has begun to set. The sun has begun to set. That doesn't sound reasonable that should be bein hashmashos. That's not even sunset yet. So the Gemara is going to have to modify this position. So that's where we get to Rabbi Chanina. Amar Rabbi Chanina, Sof galgal chama l'shakeya, utchilas galgal levana la'alos. So Rabbi Chanina qualifies it, and he says you have to say that it doesn't literally mean that the sun has begun to set, but rather it is the beginning of the end of the sun setting. In other words, the sun is just now dipping below the entire sun is now dipping below the horizon, and the moon has started to emerge. What's that song? Bad Moon Rising. Okay, so the moon is beginning to rise. So apparently when the moon is full, it rises specifically at that time. And as the commentaries say, astronomically, earlier in the month, the moon rises earlier, and later in the month, the moon rises later, or vice versa. I don't remember which one is which. But when the moon is full, or actually you can actually take a look at the footnotes on let's see. Yeah, in footnote 11, he writes that Rav Cirilio explained that betchilat kol chodesh halavana zorachat ma'at lifnei hashkia. At the beginning of the month, before the moon is full, the moon starts to rise before sunset. V'nireit betchilat halayla zman katzar, and you can only see it at the beginning of the evening for a short time. Ushveshokas miyad, and then it sets. In other words, the moon's appearance is earlier, the earlier the month is. Uvalayla shalachav ushokat meuchar yoter. Following night, it sets a little bit later. V'chein hi mosifa b'chol layla, ad shebe'emtza hachodesh yotzei b'tchilat halayla ve'enu nireit lifnei hashkia v'zorachat kol halayla. So when it's a full moon, the moon comes out later, comes out after Shkia, and it sets by dawn. In other words, it's visible the entire night. So as you go towards the end of the month, as the moon starts to wane, it comes out later and later. It rises later and later until you get to a point where the moon is only visible in the early hours of the morning. Okay, before sunrise, and maybe a little bit after sunrise as well. So that's Rav Chaim Kanievsky teaches us that based on the different phases of the moon. The different phases of the moon are visible at different times of the night. So that's why the Gemara chooses this discussion of when the moon is full, because then when the moon is full, it rises immediately upon Shkia. Okay, Vitani. So that's how you determine when Bein Hashmashos begins. And we've also said that Bein Hashmashos ends when what? When the eastern horizon, both the top and the bottom of the part of the eastern sky, are the same dark color. Vitani Shmuel, Cain, Ein halavana zorachat b'sha sha'achama shokat, v'lo shokat b'sha sha'achama zorachat. And this is a support for what Rabbi Chanina just said, that the moon does not start shining in the sky until the sun sets, and the sun doesn't set, velo shokat, and the moon doesn't set after the sun rises in the morning. Okay, fine. Okay. Let us go on. Rabbi Shmuel bar Chia bar Yehuda b'shem Rabbi Chanina. Hitchil galgal chama l'shakeya, when the sun begins to set, Adam omeid berosh har hakarmel, v'yored v'tovel bayam hagadol, v'oleh v'ochel bitrumaso, chazaka biyom tava. So here's an interesting, the Gemara is giving us all these different calculations, or because people didn't have watches in those days, for goodness sake. So you'd have to calculate what time is it, when is sunset, when is nighttime. These are all based on observations. The sun begins to set. In other words, the ball of the sun is just now starting to touch the horizon. Adam Omed Barosh Har HaKarmel. So a person could stand atop Mount Carmel. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Mount Carmel is by Haifa. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
No, where is Mount Carmel? Yeah, yeah. It's by Haifa. The Yored. So then he would descend Mount Carmel, start descending Mount Carmel, v'tovel b'yam hagadol, and he can go to mikvah in the Mediterranean. That's the Yam Hagadol. Ve'oleh, and he can come, and by the time he gets out, he can rest assured that the sun hasn't set yet. Ve'ochel bitrumaso, because chazaka b'yom tov. Now, what are we talking about? We're talking about a Kohen who's standing atop Mount Carmel. He sees the sun just touching the horizon. He says, "Oh, I better get going." Why? Because he's tameh. He wants to be able to eat truma. What criteria do you need when you're tameh? Let's say you came in touch with the sheretz, and you need to be able to eat your truma. So you have to go to mikvah, and you have to wait until something called Erev Shemesh. You have to wait until the sun sets, and it becomes nighttime. Once it becomes nighttime, you're allowed to eat your truma. But if you went to mikvah after sunset, so then you'd have to wait until the next day before you could eat your truma, because you have to go to mikvah during the day. So what the Gemara is saying is that you have time. There's a certain amount of time from the time that the sun touches the horizon until sunset. Whatever that amount of time is, let's say it's 20 minutes, you can rest assured that a regular Kohen can descend Mount Carmel, jump into the Mediterranean, and get out in time before sunset arrives. Now, the commentaries grapple with this because this either is a very athletic Kohen, or, yeah, I mean, like, he's like super strong, super fast. Or we're not talking about literally at the very top of Mount Carmel, because the very top of Mount Carmel is going to take you a couple of hours to get from the very top of Mount Carmel to get to the Mediterranean. Certainly not going to it's not going to be that quick. So they say that it's one of the peaks of Mount Carmel where there's an outlook. It's not the very top. It's one of the sort of on the side facing the west, that's somewhere elevated by Mount Carmel, but not really at the top. Okay.
Wouldn't they have people there? Like the signal that go, it's time to go. How do they do this for davening? Everything, just forget about the conflict, just in general. We have our bulletin tells us all.
Yeah, the question is, how did they assemble for a minyan?
All these things go down.
Remember,
We had witnesses.
they didn't have multiple minyanim. When you wanted to daven, you came to shul when the sun was coming up. That's when people would gather, and then they would immediately, probably even pre-sunrise, they would already have finished davening so that they would have to go to work. So people would typically daven after the first glimmer of light would come out. And we don't even know how prevalent synagogue life was, in these ancient days. So there's a big debate among scholars how prevalent synagogue life was during the Second Temple times, post-Second Temple.
We have temple remnants.
We have synagogue remnants that go back a long time, but they go back centuries, but they don't necessarily go back all the way to the Talmudic times. And some of them do. There are rare ones that do. But how prevalent were they? How often were they used? Were they only used on Sabbaths and special gatherings. We don't have all of that information. But it's certainly, synagogue life was definitely not what it is today, where, you go on your app, you find out, which minyan, and you know exactly what time sunrise is and sunset and Zman Kriya Shema and all of that stuff. And remember, people would spend every moment of daylight, they would be out in the fields working. So all right.
Okay, I see in the first line of this Rosh Aurelio says that Baruch Har Carmel says Al Sfas Hayam Shel Akko. That must have been sea level. Right, where
It says Har Shal Sfat Hayam Shel Akko. It's a
Sfas Hayam
mountain.
means like sea
It's,
level, not that.
well, Sfat Hayam just means on the seashore. Yeah. Yeah. So
Not the top of them.
yeah, yes, that's why the commentaries say it can't really be Turkey. He says, so if you take a look at footnote number 2 in the brackets, he says, Har HaKarmel hu har hayadua b'shem zeh liyad mifratz Haifa. So he says that's the well-known Mount Carmel that is nearby the sprawl of Haifa. Ulam Berosha Carmel Kifi Hanira Ein HaKavana Lamakom HaGavoa Biyoter Ba'ar Zeh. He says, but it doesn't seem like when you say atop Mount Carmel, it can't mean at the peak of the mountain. Shaharei Piskazu Nimseit B'merchak Gadol Min Hayam, because that's really far from the ocean. Ela Medubar al Echad HaMekamot HaGevohim Shebar HaSamuch Lisvat Hayam. But it's really referring to one of the high places that's right nearby the coast. Ba'ayin b'sefer Hazmanim b'halacha amud yarara hamishaer shezeh hamakom bo omeid b'yameinu hamagdalor karov lisfat hayam. I don't know what the Magdalor is. Maybe it's a well-known landmark in Haifa. All right, Moshe is going to do his AI research. The Magdalor or Migdalor, I'm not sure. Well, Migdal Or is 2 words, and that's in isn't that further inland, Migdal Or? That's what.
So the concept of being Ashwagandha is really interesting because it's a kind of twilight.
So here you have your African American giving us information.
Take offense there.
No worries at all.
This thing.
Like you have a new friend.
He's off. Okay. Taking over your phone.
Okay. So like we said, chazaka biyom tavel. So we can assume that you gave yourself enough time, and therefore you'll be allowed to eat truma that night. Hada de Tamar, behahu da'azale bekupandara. He says, Baram hahu da'azale be'isarta la bida. So you see, this language is so different from the Bavli. But the Gemara is basically saying, Hada de Tamar, when you say that, it is only, the Gemara is now qualifying that. That's only if you go and you take the shortcut from this mountain top or peak top down in the quick way, the shortcut way. You go straight down, meaning that you're gonna be a little bit more rugged than normal. And instead of taking the regular, what's called the Isarta, which is the King's Trail, then you're not going to make it in time. In other words, there was a standard trail that was a winding trail to take you up to this higher point on Mount Carmel. If you take that trail, you're not going to make it in time to the coast, to the Mediterranean, to Toivel before sunset. You're going to have to do a beeline straight down, and it may wear out your sandals and you may scrape yourself a little bit, but that's the only way that you're going to make it in time to Toivel before sunset. Yeah.
Were you saying that there were no mikvahs in between, like just the Mediterranean was the big mikvah? Or did they establish, you would think that they would have some.
We have archaeology, that indicates that there were mikvaot in many, many different communities. I mean, Yerushalayim certainly didn't have any bodies of water nearby that you could call a mikvah.
They
Yeah,
had to get water somehow.
they had to get water. So there were probably many mikvos. We have a record of many mikvos being in the city.
There's a famous line all the way
Yerushalayim.
from Hebron coming through Gush Etzion, coming to Yerushalayim. It's marked. People coming to see, I've been there, where they marked like how the distance between, because how the water used to come, it was by gravity, because it's all the way down, so they had mikvahs all along the way. So for all the regel, people would stop and go to the mikvah before coming to Yerushalayim. That was one of the missions we stopped.
Guess they thought they had to get from the Mediterranean now.
Right.
For this
Yeah.
part, the Haifa area.
Yeah. Okay. So now the Gemara asks the question, we've previously seen that the period of Bein Hashmashos is from the time that the sun sets until the eastern horizon is completely dark. Okay? But now the Gemara is going to give another opinion. Ezehu Bein Hashmashos, Amar Rebbi Tanchuma, Letipa Shel Dam, Shehi Netuna Al Gabe Chadash Shel Sayaf. Nech Lekahatipa Lekanu Lekan, Zehu Bein Hashmashos. It says something really bizarre, okay? Take a drop of blood, drop it on the edge of a sword, and the amount of time that it takes for the drop of blood to be sliced in half, that's Bein Hashmashos.
Really bizarre.
That's really bizarre. And they're into blood, they're into swords, what's going on here? Okay, so the commentaries point out that according to this Rebbe Tanchuma, the period of Bein Hashmashos takes how long? Like that. That's Bein Hashmashos. We are used to thinking that Bein Hashmashos is 20 minutes, half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever that lapse of time is between sunset and the darkening of the eastern sky. That's Bein Hashmashos. That's got to take several minutes. But Rabbi Tanchuma disagrees, and he says that Bein Hashmashos is like that. Now, we're going to have to qualify this even further. So we'll spend a little bit more time on this tomorrow, but on Wednesday, rather, I should say. Okay. So then the Gemara brings a machlokes tanoim as to what the definition of Bein Hashmashos is. So we have the opinion of Rabbi Tanchuma, and now we have a new brisa. Now here it's really interesting. Without the commentaries, we wouldn't know that this is a new brisa. It's just that the Meforshim point out that even though normally it would say Tanya or something like that, or Tani, here it doesn't say anything, and we're expected to know that it's referring to a new brisa. Ezehu Bein Hashmashos, Mishatishke Hachama, Kedei Shiyahalech Adam Chatzi Mil, Divrei Rebbe Nechemia. So now we have a machlokas, what the definition of Bein Hashmashos is. It's from the time that the sun sets until a person walks half a meal. That's Rebbe Nechemia. Now, how much is a meal? A meal is approximately a kilometer. The rabbi said that it takes about 18 minutes to walk a kilometer. So the time that it takes to walk a half a kilometer is 9 minutes. That's what it comes out according to the Meforshim. So according to Rebbe Nechemia, Bein Hashmashos is only 9 minutes. A short period of time, but certainly much longer than the previous opinion of Rebbe Tanchuma. Rebbe Yossi Omer, Bein Hashmashos keheref ayin. And Rebbe Yossi says, and that seems to be the opinion of Rebbe Tanchuma, that it's like the blink of an eye, v'lo yachlu lamud alav chachamim. And it's not a time span that the rabbis can actually calculate, meaning that it's a mysterious time, as the meaning the rabbis don't really know exactly when Bein Hashmashos falls out, because according to Rebbe Yossi, you look at the span between sunset and nightfall, and only one small instant during those few minutes that are the 10 minutes or the 20 minutes that are elapsing, only one of those moments is Bein Hashmashos. But he doesn't say what it is, and the rabbis themselves they don't even know.
Is the difference between the equator up north, is that the same?
The Gemara doesn't seem to be making a distinction over here about geographic location, but you're right. You would think that when you're in higher latitudes, further away from the equator, then the period of time
It'll be longer.
it would be longer or shorter. It would be a longer period of time. Okay.
Moshe?
It's all. Good behavior.
Actually, it was behaving,
Wasn't behaving, shut him down. Talking back.
Okay. Rabbi Yossi v'Rabbi Acha havu yasvin. Amar Rabbi Yossi lo Rabbi Acha lo mistavra sof chatzi mil de Rabbi Nechemia keheref ayin de Rabbi Yossi. So he says to him, maybe what Rabbi Yossi means when he says that Bein Hashmashos is of like a blink of an eye, does that mean that it's the end of the 9 minutes of Rabbi Nechemia? In other words, like the commentary says, this blink of an eye, Bein Hashmashos, that Rabbi Yossi is describing, chal miyad la'achar sof azman shamal echatzi mil achar shkiyas hachama. It is at the end of that half-mil walking distance that Rabbi Nechemia was describing. Uledat Rabbi Yossi kol meshach hazman hazeh shemal echatzi mil achar shkiyas hachama dayin yomu. And according to Rabbi Yossi, that period of between sunset and the end of that period of Rabbi Nechemia is considered to be daytime, according to Rabbi Yossi. And then at the end of that, you have a blink of an eye period of Bein Hashmashot. And then after that split second of Bein Hashmashot, it's nighttime. So he was asking him, is that how we're supposed to interpret it? Yes, he says, Af Amar Lei, Af Ana Sovar Kain. Yes, that is my opinion as well. We'll continue this Bezras Hashem tomorrow, Wednesday. Have a great day.